These are 5 mistakes that I see people making that really affect the health of their seedlings, but more importantly, can have a really negative effect on you getting any type of harvest from these plants at all. One of our first things we need to talk about is light. So when we're starting our seedlings indoors, lighting is super important. Not only that you actually have grow lights that are full wavelength light spectrum, but that they are at the appropriate distance from the plants. Believe it or not, these tomato starts are growing so fast that just since yesterday, overnight, they've shot up, and this is way too close. We don't want the leaves actually touching our light bulbs. Now, these are guards, the bulb is up higher, but these definitely need to be raised up. Now, depending on the strength of your light bulbs that you have, some of them you will need to have higher away. For these light bulbs, and for most if you're buying like from a shop and not a specific grow store, they're gonna be about 2 inches from the top of your plants. Where that can become problematic is if you have plants that are different types. These are basil. Basil plants are not going to get as tall nearly as fast as our tomatoes. So I'm gonna be rectifying this today because this is really too far away, light-wise, from the tops of my basil plants. A lot of people know that you have to harden off your seedlings or they're gonna go into shock and they're going to die if you take them from this very controlled, protected environment and plop them outdoors. However, if you are using heat mats that have a temperature control, when you're first germinating things, especially things like hot peppers, so the jalapenos, you are going to have your soil temperature very warm. Ideally, I put mine usually around 73 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit to germinate things like hot peppers. So you have this handy dandy little probe that actually goes into the soil so that it can accurately know how hot to get these heat mats to actually make the temperature of the soil whatever you've selected. In this case, it's at 73 degrees Fahrenheit. But once the peppers have germinated, the soil temperature can gradually be reduced as long as our air temperature is at least 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which this room stays warmer than that with the lights and our heat mats. But if you don't slowly, gradually take the soil temperature down to what the soil temperature is going to be outside by the time you plant them, that is a little bit more of a shock as well. So once they have all germinated, and I pretty much have, most of my jalapenos have germinated. I have one cell that did not, but I've got a couple extras in here, so it equals out. It's been over 2 weeks. What's going to germinate there is most likely going to, it's germinated or it is not going to. So we need to start turning this down. So I turn it down by 2-degree increments every couple of days, and then I'll begin the hardening off. Now, if you don't use heat mats, then don't worry about that, but you could slowly reduce the temperature in the room that you have them at to more mimic what the outdoor conditions will be when you are going to be planting your plants out. The key to knowing when to pot up on your plants is when it has developed its first and second set of true leaves. Now, the very first leaves that a plant develops, these are not the true leaves. So this is the very first set. And the way that you can tell that is the true leaves are going to be your second set. So this is second set of leaves on the plant, but first set of true leaves, and the second is developing. It's actually easier. These are Brandywine. It's a little bit easier to tell on the varieties of tomatoes that have more sawtooth leaves because you can really see the difference. So jagged edge, true leaf, these are not true. These are just what first, when the plant germinates and forms to help feed it as it begins to grow. So once it has started to develop this first and second set of true leaves, it's time to pot up. And the reason for that is, one, we need really good root development. The better root development you have when a plant is young, then the more roots there are to actually feed the plant as it grows and develops food, which is bigger harvest for you and me, which is what we're after. Also, we need more space for root development, but we also need larger amounts of soil so that the roots can develop, but they actually have food to pull from in order to develop and feed itself. So this is when we want to pot up. Now, really important, however, especially with seedlings and when we're seed starting, is that you have really good quality potting soil. Now, this video is actually not sponsored by this company, but I really like the Fox Farm, and I just use their regular potting soil. This works really good for all of my seed starting. It works great when I've got some plants that actually do grow in pots, like some of my smaller herbs. The reason for this, you don't want to just use regular soil out of your garden, even if you have really good garden soil, is because it's going to be a lot more compact. And we actually don't want that when we're growing seedlings. You can use sifted compost. I don't have any compost at the right stage now to sift to plant in. So this is what I found for when I am doing my seed starting, which is a relatively small amount of soil. This has been the best. I've tried other brands. I've tried cheaper brands. I've tried lots of other brands, and your soil quality, especially when you're seed starting, definitely matters, because if that plant doesn't get good nutrition from the get-go, it's always going to struggle, or it's just going to take it that much longer to be able to support itself and actually produce a harvest. So when you are potting up, it's important to know what the plant that you're potting up likes. For tomato plants, we're going to pot tomato plants really, really deep, because any part of the stem that is exposed to soil will grow more roots, and that's going to help it develop a stronger, better root system. That is not true of all plants. It is true of tomatoes. So when I'm first potting up, you're going to notice these larger seed trays, I only filled them halfway through with soil because, and these are really great, these are the American Tray Company. They are really hard plastic, so I can use these for a lifetime, and they have these great little holes on the bottom. So I can just go like this. Look at that, super easy. There's all my little baby roots, and it just pops right out. So I've only filled these about halfway through, because when I put this down in here, that puts it right at the top of the soil line to the leaves, which is what I want with my tomato plants. Now, sometimes you'll have here, where I actually have 2 tomato plants. Somehow I got a little excited with my seeds, and I managed to get 2 seeds into 1 cell, and they both germinated. But when they're small like this, that is so not a problem, because I'm simply going to separate them right now. So here's where I'm just going to kind of lightly begin to pull, and I want each of them to retain their roots. See? There we go. There's 2 little baby ones. So same thing. Gonna put those down in the bottom here, and then we'll fill with soil. Probably the most important part of seed starting is actually going to be the timing. Because if you have your timing wrong, you either are going to get no harvest, or you're going to get very little harvest. So it's crucial that you know what type of plant you're planting and what its needs are. So case in point, here I've got tomatoes. These are warm weather plants. And if I plant them too early, they're going to not do well. They're not going to survive a frost. If I plant them too late, by the time they get ready to actually produce tomatoes, that frost can come and kill them. On the flip side, when you have cool weather plants, which is what I've got here, these are sugar daddy peas. And then I have some very sad looking broccoli and cauliflower, because I did not think the ducks could reach these. I was setting them out to transplant into the garden. And very obviously, the ducks thought these were a delightful treat that had been left out just for them as a buffet. So inadvertently, I will be eating these because I will be eating the duck eggs, but I think that they chomped so much off of these ones. I don't think they're going to recover. So sadly, these are a loss. However, they didn't seem to like the peas quite as much, and I think there's enough leaves on the peas that I'm gonna be fine. So we're gonna go ahead and put these into the garden. However, these are cool weather plants. So if you seed start these too late in the spring, the problem is by the time they are ready to begin producing, the temperatures outdoors are too hot, and they'll simply go to bolt, meaning you just won't get a harvest because they're going to go directly to seed. So you can see why, based on cool weather versus warm weather, it's really, really crucial that you have your timing right. I missed the opportunity to seed start my spring cool weather vegetables. So I'm really grateful for the sponsor of this video, which is Azure Standard. And I use Azure Standard for pretty much what we're not producing here on our homestead as far as dry goods in our pantry. However, in the spring and early summer, they also have Ellie's Eden, which is a USDA organic certified start. So they ship them, they're just little tiny plant starts like this. So if you're like me and maybe you missed the boat on seed starting them yourself, you can still get really nice seed starts from Azure Standard. I've used seed starts from them on some different flowers that I didn't have, and if I missed the boat on that cool weather or in the summer for fall growing plants, and knowing that I can grab them. However, as you get further into summer, they do shut down the greenhouse. It's really more for spring and early summer, so make sure you check on that if you're watching this and looking to do a fall garden, which needs to be planted in the summertime. So speaking of timing, with our seedlings, getting them started right, nice and healthy, potted up at the right time, ready to go in the ground at the right time, I had put out my cabbage starts. I got those in the ground, and then I didn't have enough time that day to put the rest of these in, but we had a sneaky overnight low. So for cabbage and a good number of your cool weather vegetables, you typically can start to plant out your seedlings about 4 weeks before your last average frost date. Depending on your weather, maybe you can push it a little bit for about 6 weeks. So I got the cabbage put out, and normally, if we're gonna get really because sometimes you can still get those surprise, really super lows. Then I would throw frost fabric over top of the netting that I have, mainly to keep the ducks out. Now, the ducks don't seem to mind the garlic. They don't bother the garlic at all. I've got lots of garlic in the ground. These were left over from winter, and they just went to seed and bolted. But you can see where they have ate almost all of the leaves off of these and stripped them. So unless I put it in the fenced garden area, when I'm putting out my spring starts, I have to cover them and protect them from the ducks. So I have this netting up, but this doesn't offer any protection really when it comes to frost. It's really just for moths and the ducks. So I didn't put out frost fabric because when I went to bed that night, it was cloudy. Typically here, if you have cloud cover, that insulates and it's warmer. Well, the clouds moved out overnight, and when I woke up, it was 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Cabbage can flirt with 26 degrees, sometimes down to 24, and it can be okay, especially if it's more established, but these were pretty babies. So here's what we've got. So you can see here, I got a little bit of bug damage there, and these outer leaves did not like that cold temperature. They definitely got a little bit of frost damage. However, these inner ones, I think are gonna be just fine. And we've now moved along. I don't have any of those forecasted overnight lows quite that cold, so I think these are gonna be okay, but you can see as long as your dogs and other animals don't step on them, that getting your timing down for your seedlings is really, really important. For first-time customers for Azure Standard, they gave us a discount code. It's Melissa15, and you get 15% off your first $100 order from Azure Standard. Link is in the video description. Also, if you want to learn about using wood chips in the garden, which you absolutely want to learn about using wood chips in the garden, but doing it the right way, check out this video.